Hello everyone, welcome back to Modernizing Donner Pass here on Train Simulator 2021 as we continue our speed build series, Modernizing the Route, here for episode 13. I forget if episode 12 was solely recorded and edited on my new PC, but this episode is at least. I forget what happened in episode 12, but here on the new PC, here editing on the PC, it just feels good to be able to work on the route. I sadly haven't been able to work on the route every single day, but hopefully from here on out I can set a goal to just at least open the route for 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes even, and just crank something out. And so sadly not a lot of this I feel will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube, but at the same time it just needs to get completed in some aspect, and I really believe I can get this done. So but yeah, here in episode 13, the resolution might look a little bit better as well, because I was able to record this, or able to keep the game open, keep the sim open and at the full 1920 by 1080p resolution, because I was able to hook up my TV monitor to open up Google Maps and things like that. So it's a lot easier for me to transition between the two. It also makes it a little bit easier for me to edit this out and such. But yeah, so the resolution should look a bit better as well. We'll see how it goes when I post it on YouTube. I might put this out on 2K, just because it has a better bit rate. And I'm still keeping the frame rates probably around 30 and such, just because it's a speed build series. It's nothing important, but yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that just happened within the last 2 minutes. Obviously everyone just saw that there with the game crashing, and this happened like 5 times during this 6-hour recording session I had. It was just really frustrating. I don't know if anyone else has that issue, but if you go to delete, if you use that, I don't know what that, I guess it's that like highlight tool where you just click on the ground and then you drag it out and it highlights like a certain circle area. You can delete props or move props if you have them selected like that. And for some reason, occasionally, it doesn't happen all the time, but probably like one out of 8 times, the game will just crash for some memory issue. So I don't know what that's all about, but that happened a lot. And I've just done what I've always done and made sure I hit F2, I think is what it is, and you can just save your changes that you've made. So just like in any other program that you would use, if you have the option to save, be sure to save no matter how far you've gone, because you never know if the game could crash. And it's very easy in a build scenario like this to go so far and not have things saved. You're going to lose a lot of progress. So you'll notice that too. Usually once I'm done with a section of track or a section of laying buildings down, and especially if I'm deleting props, I'm making sure I'm saving almost every 10 seconds, it feels like. But yeah, so for those who don't know where we're at on the route, we are to the west of Reno, and we're working our way pretty much up the grade, up Donner Pass, basically. For those who, again, have followed the series since the beginning, you know that midway through this series, I think around episode 7 or 8, I completely redid the route. I had to start over from scratch. But before that, original version, when I started episode 1, I did have a previous version of Donner Pass, so this is theoretically like the 3rd version of it, and that previous version was on another computer, and I had gotten pretty far with it, and I had gotten a lot of track laying done too. I was actually good with track all the way up to Truckee. So going through this has been sort of just kind of remembering what I did then, and just remembering what the grade was like, because for most people who have played Donner Pass, you know that the grade is very wonky. Before I get more into the grade, you also see me do some water stuff here, and you notice that I first use the Donner Pass water rivers, and then I use some other one, and then this is like the Montana Highline River, and yeah, I just pretty much wasted a good 30 minutes trying to figure out what water asset I was going to use there. Anyways, but besides that, there's a lot of parts on this route where the grade will go from like a 1.5% grade, some points are even like a 2% grade, and then it will just flatten out. It'd be a 0% grade. And like I said, this route is pretty old, so I think this route was built before Dovetail Games. I think it was a Microsoft thing at first. I don't know. I don't know the history of it. It's all kind of a blur to me, especially since I started playing around 2014 is when I got the sim. But just in general, the grade is just off by a lot. And you know, the route's definitely was not set in the modern era, especially when you go to the original route and you go through Reno. It's still street running track, basically. You know, it's at street level, and you know, like I said, it's very basic. But there's a lot of things that are just wrong with the track grade, and you can clearly see here as I'm putting these two sets of tracks here that the original placement of the tracks is just not even close to what I personally think it should be. And you can tell the areas where they had the track go up a certain grade, and then they thought, oh, this is going up too steep, so then we're just going to flatten it out for like half a mile section and then raise the grade up again. And I just feel like, yeah, there's modulations in the grade. You're going to have that no matter where you go, even in the flattest parts of the United States and in any other country. You know, it can seem like the grade flattens out, but it's not just like a 0% grade incline. You know, it's going to modulate between 0.5, 0.8, 1, 1.2, and that's kind of how I eyed up most of what I'm doing here, is just by doing those slight increments. I'm not doing anything crazy, and I'm not trying to recorrect the grade by flattening out to 0 completely. So this should provide both a little bit more of a realistic experience, but at the same time, when you're driving your trains through here, it's gonna feel a little bit more realistic because you can make those slight adjustments either using the dynamic brake if you're going downhill, or whichever notch and power you're in, you know, going up the grade. It's gonna be a little bit more realistic in that regard. And obviously, if you're on Donner Pass and any other mountainous routes, you should be using DPUs and such. So, or if not, a good hefty amount of locomotives to pull your consist. But yeah, there's been, I know a lot of people complain about the original Donner Pass having some physics issues, and one thing for certain, as you'll see later on in this build, is that there are a lot of things that the original route did that, in regards to track laying, where it just wasn't close to where it is in real life. But then part of that too is the radiuses, and some of these radiuses in real life are just so tight that the sim doesn't do a good job with it. Because I think this sim calculates all sorts of movement. It doesn't just calculate like acceleration and braking momentum. It also calculates between the train swaying left and right. That's something I think in Train Sim World they fixed really well, is that they just worried about the front and back modulations and like weight transfers, but not side to side, so they can do tighter radiuses just like you see on Sandpatch Grade and such without having derailment issues. So a lot of the grade that, you know, a lot of the radiuses that you're going to see as we move more southwest and up the grade through Donner is going to be, you know, how tight do I really want to go with it? You know, and I'm gauging it with, on the very bottom, you can see you have all this information of like track length, of radius, of the gradient and such. So it's just paying attention to a lot of that. But yeah, like I said, mostly this episode is just track laying and just trying to get to a good spot. You know, it's very clear in some of these clips. You can see where the original track was and where my track is. And a lot of this, I spent a lot of time, like probably a good 30 minutes in total, on Google Maps and just going to Street View on, I think, Highway 80, Interstate 80 that goes along here. And just seeing where the highway is in relation to the tracks. And sometimes I can't even gauge it on that, because there's places where I think the original road layout isn't even close to real life. And I also can't gauge it on the river because I feel the river is way off. So like I said before, I feel like I'm just redoing the entire route, compared to whoever did Cajon Pass a while back, whoever modernized that. They really just focused on redoing, I think, the tracks. I don't think they really worried about grade. I think they just did that trick where you can go into one of the utilities or whatever and just replace the track assets. And I think they did a little bit more with like roads and crossing grades and things like that. But for me, like I said, I feel like I'm just starting from scratch at this point. So yeah, that's what's going to make it take a while and things like that. Like this part of the track right here, I believe the river, not where my cursor is there, but like beforehand, the river is like higher than the track surface in the original route. And I'm like, who thought that was a good idea when they put this route together? It just kind of blows my mind away how, I get it. It's an old route. It was created a long, long time ago. Obviously it was set back, to an older era. But then at the same time, there's a lot of modern aspects too with the track layout and with how they did things. So it's just a mess. So, but it's just getting this gradient right, and just, I don't know, just fixing it. I mean, I was watching, is it Emissions Gaming, I think is the channel. He just released his time lapse of Donner Pass, and it's the original Donner Pass, obviously, because this isn't finished, and he's mostly just doing those types of completed routes. I actually don't know if he's done modern Cajon Pass, but taking a look at that, I also had a realization of how long Donner Pass actually is, and even just getting up to Truckee is not even a quarter of the route. That's more of like a fifth of the route, a sixth of the route. There's so much more past the summit that I still have not familiarized myself with. Like with working on this route for the 4+ years I've been trying to work at it, my focus has only been from Reno to Truckee. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, what's nice though about doing this and compared to any other route in the US is that your major cities on this route and along this route, which is Reno, Truckee, Colfax, I think has a kind of a small community, and then Roseville, whatever it's called, and at the California end, are the major cities and places that having some detail is nice in. Otherwise, in places like you see here, which along the Truckee River and along the interstate, it's just that detail. And then obviously just copying, pasting trees, which I deleted a lot of too. A lot of these trees are in like a huge decal, like square area. So as soon as I delete that, it deletes all the trees. So, but it's not as bad as detailing houses. I can just plop some trees down. It's not going to be that big of an issue. But yeah, like I said, if I'm redoing the track here, at this point in the route, I'm probably going to be redoing the track everywhere else. And again, I'm redoing it because I want to get the grades somewhat more realistic. I don't want there to be, modulations of like a 1.5% grade difference between two sections of track. I want it to be a lot smoother. So like I said, a lot of this is just working on that. So like I said, just working along. This is one place where the Truckee River swings back to the southern end of the rails, and goes from the right to the left, and I think there's a little like track break here. Yeah, you can see in the overlay the tracks kind of separate a bit. Yeah, this is one example too of how I'm not following the real radius, and if you can kind of point it out in this part, and you probably have seen it in previous clips as well, but in a lot of my radiuses, I've been going in between what was originally laid down in the route and then what Google Maps showed. And I'm just splitting that down the middle. So it's not too tight of a grade, I keep getting the two mixed up. It's not too tight of a radius, but at the same time, it's not extremely straight on. So it's still trying to follow, what the tracks are like in real life, but just being slightly off, which is okay. Again, at the end of the day, not too many people are going to notice, and this is already a huge improvement in my opinion than the original. But you saw there in those previous clips, I was on Street View, and I was even putting the in-game in-sim camera over the highway. And I think even in this part, the highway is actually taller than the rails, and I even went down and decided to shave off the grade at this part. But the thing to note about this area too, and you can see how the original tracks were much higher at this point. Well, when they get to this bend up ahead here, you notice how the tracks split off. And actually the southern track, the left track is what we're viewing at from this angle, it rides higher than the right track. They're both at two different elevations. I don't know if that's just because of, they're working on the incline of the mountain, and then against the river that, they thought that laying the tracks at two different levels was better. I don't know. It's obviously not like this here. It was like that way back more east at that part, earlier in the video that you guys saw. But the problem is, and you can see how big my differences are, and that's only like a 0.3% difference there with the height of the track there. So even a slight percent, like a decimal over percentage change is a huge difference. But the issue with this area is that the grade got to a certain point and it flattened out from here. Like, they might have been raised a little bit, but as soon as the tracks split off into two different grades, it just flattened. And you'll see when we get closer to this section too, when the tracks come back together, you'll notice that the original route, the tracks were like underneath the river level. It just stays that low, and when it cuts through this one portion, it's super low. And I didn't check it in this build when I was in this recording session, but I know previously the grade after the rails come back and join together is something ridiculous and atrocious. And it just doesn't make sense. And even when I go to Street View, the rails are not that low. So I feel like, again, what I'm doing right here is still better than what the original route was like. You can see as I start it here, but yeah, like right here, you see how the tracks were originally dug into the ground a little bit, and that river height was just way too high, and everything is out of proportion. You can see here, where that track is. If you get an idea where the lower track would be, the lower track at this point is going to start inclining closer up, but there's already a huge difference with what was originally there compared to what I'm working on here. And especially all those houses there. That's a weird area for houses and things along the mountain, but that's also, I don't know, it just feels like this valley was cut way too deep. And like I said, just go to Street View, and try to find a good point where you're looking at the edge and looking at this. Like I said, I think that was maybe a bit too high. Yeah, I think I lowered it a little bit, and it's still not that much. It's still incredibly high up in the air, but I don't know. It just isn't that far down into the valley. Now the highway, I think, does need to be raised a little bit, and I'll obviously go through it and change that. But it's just a mess. It's almost like I'd be better off starting from scratch, loading up the area, loading up assets, instead of taking this route and actually making the changes necessary. But yeah, you can see here, tracks at the water level here, but then it flattens out. It flattens out in the original layout, and it just doesn't make sense. But yeah, so I don't know what else was I going to mention about this. But yeah, it was just getting the tracks back up to that level might have been a little bit too extreme, but at the same time, like I said, it's still better than what was originally there. So I'm not really complaining that much. But yeah, you see, I used a mixture of the track assets of just like the normal gravel road bed underneath it, and then there's some with the extended one. And too bad the terrain doesn't snap to the bottom of that extended gravel portion, but it's just going to be a lot of adjusting the ground to a certain level and getting it where it should be, getting it all corrected. But yeah, that, like I said, that just looks a lot better too. Yeah, as I combine the tracks there, you want to make sure if you do come up to a weird spot where you're like combining tracks together, make sure you weld it together. There's that little weld tool on the top left that will make sure that your tracks stay together. Otherwise, you will get some derailments. And that's the other thing too. I need to make sure. I'll probably, before I continue on in the rails, I'm gonna drive some trains up and down, get some long, heavy consists up, 70 to 100 plus cars on it, and just make sure everything works okay. Otherwise, I'll probably have to change some radiuses, but I think for the most part, a lot of that was okay as we take a look through there. So we work our way all the way back to the bottom, and like I said, I've shown this in previous episodes before, but if you've forgotten already, the transitions from different gradients to, from one to another is important to smooth out. I like using a lot of these marker tools. I think they actually use these when building just to get reference points, but you can use those like that yellow point, or you can use those distant links. I think those things were the 60 meter one. They're either the 50 or the 60 meter board. I can't really see it that much on the preview, but you can go highlight the track, hit the gradient tool, and you can see how big of a difference it is to smooth out the track. So if you ever get that opportunity and that chance to smooth it out, do so, because that's going to really help the experience going from one grade to another, because that's what it's like in real life. There are some pretty extreme grades out there, but you just need to make sure to smooth them out and check over them. And I think once I got done with that, I didn't even touch the markers. I just kept them down just so I have a reference and know that, hey, I had adjusted that gradient and I had played with it. So I guess that's a great tool for smoothing it out. Like even this here, I think was like it was like a 0.2% grade difference, but you still gotta smooth it out a little bit. It'll still help the experience. Some people might question super elevating the tracks. If you don't know what that is, that's basically adding banking to the tracks. So obviously if you go around a right-hand corner, the left side of the track is gonna be banked a little bit higher. I've never had luck with super elevating, just because there'd be times where it super elevates the curved part, but for some reason it doesn't smoothly transition into the straight part. I don't know why. I don't know why it's like that for some track. I never had that luck on the Stevens Pass track assets, and on the Highline track assets that are pretty much the same as those, I'm still not really having luck with that. So we'll see. I mean, like I said, that's the only unrealistic thing about it, is that the real life tracks usually do have super elevation, but I don't know, just for some reason I haven't been able to fully understand how that works, and there's just something about the length of the track not cooperating with the super elevation. But for the most part, it won't have super elevation, just like the original route, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, partly because the speed limit for most of this route, I think, is between 25 and 35 miles per hour anyway, so you're not going fast enough to really derail it, and you shouldn't be going that fast up the grade either. It should be a nice, slow, steady climb up or climb down, whatever it might be. But yeah, we'll see. I might have to watch some videos or do some more testing on the super elevation and things like that. But yeah, at least just getting the gradient smooth there and using the smoothing tool is very important. And yeah, as you can see, I'm doing a lot of moving around of or deleting really of assets. Like I said, I'm pretty much just starting right over from scratch. So at least I don't have to import the ground level, but whatever that, at least it's still giving me a better base to start with. And, if anything, this is giving me a reference from where the original route was and things like that. But yeah, like I said, this episode, I really just touched the tracks, the river here, didn't do any scenery things, and probably in my free time, I'll raise the ground level up to the track surface and things like that. But yeah, just working on the river, getting that down. Water for some reason in this sim, I never liked. I never liked getting it right. Even in this area here, I felt like I put the river up a little bit too high. But Yeah, it is what it is. It's still a big part of the scenery, so just getting that down and getting that as close as possible is still pretty good. But yeah, we're continuing along. Like I said, hopefully I can just spend like 30 minutes a day moving forward to continue working and continue cranking out something on the route. Hopefully the next video would be me just working on the scenery up to that point, and heck, I might even just, outside of recording, I may just continue the tracks all the way to the Truckee. I just want to get something done. I know all of you guys are really excited for this route. I'll probably put something in the description if you guys live in the area to send me some reference pictures, especially going up to Truckee. I'd greatly appreciate that. We'll see how it goes. I know a lot of people have been asking for feedback and such, and I know a lot of people have also asked for me making some videos on tips on doing route building and such. So if you have any questions about any of that, be sure to leave it down in the comments below. I just thank you guys again for keeping up with the series, for those who have stayed with it for so long. And yeah, with my new PC being built finally and being able to work in my room, get on at any point, it's definitely a relief. But thank you guys for watching episode 13 once again, and I will see you guys in episode 14 of Modernizing Donner Pass.